The tissues from the chest that go up to the shoulder, these just will adaptively shorten because your body's like, okay, we don't need that range anymore, so they're just naturally shorter. One of the other things that happens is the sliding surfaces get sort of matted down. Lacrosse balls are great at just kind of unwinding those tissues and that fascia and just getting things to slide the way they should. All right, today I just want to talk about shoulder position. There's a lot of people that I work with and a lot of people I see, they tend to have slightly internally rotated shoulders or just kind of this like rounded forward shoulder position. Just due to a lot of lifestyle factors and maybe just a lack of understanding of posturally where they should be. A lot of people just end up like this. It's just be a quick video, kind of how to address that rounded shoulder position going forward and a few different things that you can do to start to open yourself up a little bit. So some of the things are going to be mobilization, so you can kind of open up this chest shoulder insertion, get that opened up a little bit, and then also some activation to get the muscles firing to pull you back into a better position. All right, so the lacrosse ball mobilization, this is sort of addressing the sliding surfaces between the shoulder and the chest. So anywhere from the collarbone down to the armpit, that's all gonna be fair game right in here. So what ends up happening is adaptive shortening. If you spend enough time in this rounded shoulder position, the tissues from the chest that go up to the shoulder, these just will adaptively shorten because your body's like, okay, we don't need that range anymore, so they're just naturally shorter. One of the other things that happens is the sliding surfaces get sort of matted down. Lacrosse balls are great at just kind of unwinding those tissues and that fascia and just getting things to slide the way they should. So you just need a lacrosse ball, again, anywhere from the collarbone down to the armpit, fair game. Spend about 2 minutes over here. I would just find a spot that lights up and then I would just try moving my arm through various ranges of motion. Go up the wall. Just spend a lot of time there. If you get on a spot and it hurts so bad that you can't move your arm for sure, just tie in the breathing a little bit more. So all you do with that, find a spot that's kind of making you scream. Inhale. As you exhale, try to get the body to relax and sink into that lacrosse ball. This is generally where I start with everyone. Anytime there's like an internal shoulder rotation or just like adaptive shortening, this rounded forward position, this is where I would start. The next one you can do with lacrosse ball, for most clients, I start them up against a wall. There's a version of this you can do on the ground. It sucks to do. So for most people, I just start up against the wall just because it's a little bit easier to titrate how much pressure you have into these tissues. This one can be a little bit tricky for people to find. So if you have like a trainer at the gym, you can just have them try to place the ball where you want it. The target you're looking for is if you can find your shoulder blade, which is sort of this rounding, arching bone here. You want to be working on the outside of that shoulder blade. So what you're trying to hit here is the infraspinatus and the teres minor. These are going to be your primary external rotators. So by getting into these tissues, see if we can find it right there. I'm just going to lean, get some pressure into those tissues. For the first minute, I'm just going to roll around. Second minute, I'm actually going to start externally rotating, and I want to feel those tissues working while they're pinned down against that lacrosse ball. We'll go into an activation after this, but if you can get into those tissues first with the lacrosse ball, that will help with the activation before you actually get into it. Also, this helps you kind of understand which tissues should be working when you're doing that activation. So kind of like the level 1 option, that's going to be up against the wall, just because depending on how far away your feet are, the more you lean into it, the more pressure there's going to be there. Again, doing it on the ground, it's pretty much your body weight, and that sucks. It hurts. You really have to sink into that ball, and then when you start adding that external rotation, it can potentially make you scream. So easiest version, up against the wall, and again, you want to be up against that shoulder blade, working on tissues on the outside laterally of your shoulder blade, away from the spine. Just get the lacrosse ball anywhere in there, lean up against the wall. First minute, you just want to sort of roll around in those tissues. Nothing too crazy. Once you find those spots that light up, go back to them where you're going to add that sort of 90-degree external rotation with the hand, and you want to feel those tissues work while you're doing that external rotation. So the next one, this is actually an external rotation activation movement. So if you sort of fired up those muscles with the lacrosse ball against the wall, you should have a pretty good idea of which muscles you should be utilizing here. This is commonly used for rotator cuff strengthening or just kind of rehab for injuries. So on these, the location of the elbow matters when you're doing these. You want the elbows to be a little bit forward, sort of pinned down the front side of that rib cage, not neutral, definitely not behind. The other thing, you want the elbow pulled in the whole time. That's gonna force the synergists in this movement. They tend to be a little bit overactive. That'll force them to quiet down, and you can actually use the muscles that you want to. So elbow kind of on the front side of the rib cage. I'm blocking with a towel. I have to keep the towel in place, really slow on the way out, 3 or 4 seconds, and then back in. I would do 10 to 12 of these at kind of like that 4-4 cadence. Another thing you can do if you have decent range of motion, I would actually reach back behind and try to feel those tissues and make sure the right muscles are firing. Yep, there they go. Because you want to make sure the right muscles are firing when you're doing an activation movement, otherwise you're just fucking doing whatever. So the reason to do an external rotation activation exercise is because to get out of this internal rotation, that rounded position, you need to be able to externally rotate the shoulders, and you need the right muscles to be firing. So the external rotators, that's what you were working with the lacrosse ball on the outside of that shoulder blade, and you're also activating those muscles with the external rotation with the band. The last thing we'll try to do is actually hit the lower traps, because it's going to be the lower traps that actually pull the scapula down, keeping it in a good position. So once you have the range and the mobility to roll the shoulders back, you need to be able to maintain that position, but you don't want it to be actively rolled back the whole time. Like, do I look relaxed? Does this look like a good position? So you need to learn to be able to pull from the lower traps down here. If you can learn to get those to pull, that's going to pull the entire system down, the shoulder blade pulled back into a good position, and that'll translate the shoulder to being in a good position. So for this lower trap activation, I did a video a while back, I'll link to that. I think it's just called lower traps. We don't have a bench down here, so I'll just show 2 other versions. One of them, body weight version, all you're doing, this is basically wise. This is like a warm-up movement, but you know, it still gets the job done. Hinge yourself over at about 45 degrees, hands start together in the center, reach the arms up and out. Arms go to about 45 degrees. From here, I'm just holding 6 seconds, and then I'm gonna come back down. I'll do that for 8 to 10 reps. So you wanna hold up top, get that isometric hold until you feel it in the lower back. Also, tying in the breathing, forcing yourself to take a big deep breath when you're down in this position, that usually helps people feel it in the lower back. If you have a friend, you can point to the general area, have them tap those tissues to see if you feel like you're using the right muscles. Another option is doing it here on the ball. Yep, I'm in frame. Feet up against the wall, knees are off the ground. Drive the hips forward. This is getting you up to basically a 45-degree angle. It's just a little bit more active in the whole posterior chain. Same thing, wise, arms go out to about 45 degrees, palms are facing each other. Again, if you're not feeling it, take a deep breath. 6-second hold up top there. You can also use light weights. I would start just with body weight. If you can feel it doing body weight, and that seems relatively easy, 2-pounders, 3-pounders, 5-pounders, very lightweight on those. So if you guys are finding that that shoulder position tends to be a bit of an issue, driving, typing, texting, just generally poor posture, that shoulder is going to get tight in the front, so you got to be able to loosen it up with a lacrosse ball, then try to mash those tissues open in the back up against the wall. That'll also help you, give you an idea of what tissues you want to be working. Do a little activation so you can get that external rotation of the shoulders, and then try to start working those lower traps. That's going to help pull you into a better position and keep you in a better position throughout the day.